We spend so much of our time and energy chasing the right answers. But what if the real secret to solving tough problems isn't the answer, but the question? That's what we're digging into today. We're going to explore the art of asking truly powerful questions. It's about shifting from just finding solutions to actually shaping the problem you're trying to solve in the first place.
Think about it. In our work, in our lives, it often feels like we're trying to solve a giant complex maze, right? We pour all this effort into finding that perfect, direct path to the center, the best possible solution to whatever challenge is right in front of us. And hey, that's a great goal to have.
But, and this is the question that changes everything, what if all that hard work, all that brilliant problem solving, is pointed in the completely wrong direction? What if we're climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall? And this isn't just some hypothetical idea. It actually has a name, a Type 3 error. It's the huge and surprisingly common mistake of giving a perfect answer to the wrong question. This is the kind of mistake that can sink a whole project, not because the team did a bad job, but because the question they started with was flawed from the get-go.
So to make sure we don't fall into that trap, we've got to understand what makes a question powerful and effective versus one that's, weak or even destructive. So let's break down the anatomy of a good inquiry.
At its very core, a good question is a learning tool. Seriously, that's its main job. It's meant to take a big, fuzzy, confusing problem where you're not sure what's going on and slice through that uncertainty, bringing clarity and real insight with every single answer.
And when you put good and bad questions side by side, the difference is just night and day. A high-quality question is all about seeking information. It works by knocking out multiple possibilities at once, helping you zero in on what's important. And socially, it builds trust. A low-quality question, on the other hand, is usually just looking for someone to agree with it. It's not really exploring, and it often makes people defensive. So here's the really crucial part. Bad questions aren't just unhelpful, they're actively damaging. They literally get in the way. They introduce bias, they create confusion, and they can completely derail collaboration. Okay, here's a perfect example of a really common trap. It's called a leading question. See that word terrible? By adding that, the person asking isn't looking for an honest opinion anymore. They're basically fishing for agreement. A real question would just be, what do you think of this discovery? Simple, neutral.
And it doesn't just stop with leading questions. You've also got those super wordy, rambling questions that just leave everyone more confused than when they started. And maybe worst of all are the fake questions. You know the type, right? They sound like a question, but they're actually just a criticism in disguise designed to put somebody on the spot.
But okay, it's not enough to just avoid the bad stuff. Asking truly great questions isn't just a technique. It really requires a specific mindset and a few cognitive skills that, luckily, we can all work on. So, one of the biggest roadblocks, especially for experts, is this thing called the curse of knowledge. You know how it is? When you know something inside and out, it's almost impossible to imagine what it's like not to know it. And that can stop you from asking the most basic, foundational questions that could lead to a huge breakthrough. The antidote? It's simple. Curiosity. Think of it like this. Curiosity is the engine. It's what drives you to want to know more. Then, your intelligence is the navigator. It helps you form smart, strategic questions that get you the most information. And finally, creativity is what lets you ask those game-changing what-if questions that nobody else is thinking of.
All right, so that all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do it? How do we turn this idea of a curious mindset into something we can use every single day?
Well, the good news is there are some incredibly powerful, yet really simple frameworks you can start using right away. Let's take a look at two of the best ones.
First up is the 5 whys. This one is so simple, it almost feels like a trick, but it is so effective. You just state a problem, and then you ask why it happened. Then you take that answer and you ask why about that. You just keep going until you drill past all the surface-level stuff and get to the actual root cause of the issue.
Now, the second tool is called humble inquiry. This one is less about a process and more about your posture. It's the art of asking questions from a place of genuine curiosity because you truly want to understand. In a world this complex, nobody has all the answers. Humble inquiry creates that safe space for people to share what they really know without fear.
Okay, so let's pull all these pieces together. We've talked about good questions versus bad ones, getting into the right mindset, and a couple of great tools. So now, here's a unified plan that ties everything together.
Just think of this as your roadmap. First, you define the real problem. Maybe use the 5 whys to get to the core of it. Next, you explore by just brainstorming tons of questions. Then you prioritize, picking the questions that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. After that, you engage other people, using humble inquiry to get honest input. And finally, you iterate. You look at what you've learned and refine your questions. It's a full circle of strategic learning.
So, at the end of the day, here's the big takeaway. The goal of all this isn't to walk into a room and prove you're the smartest person there. It's about becoming the most effective learner in the room. The person who asks the best questions is usually the one who ends up driving the most meaningful progress.
And with that in mind, I'll leave you with a little challenge. Think about a problem you're wrestling with right now. What's just one why you can ask about it today that might completely change how you see the entire situation? Think about it. Thanks for tuning in.